Hello, I'm David Hart, Executive Vice President at the Florida Chamber of Commerce. Welcome to another edition of the Florida Chamber's Bottom Line. Our special guest today is Senator Ana Terra Flores, Chair of the Fiscal Policy Committee in the Senate. Senator, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me.
Senator, I'd like to talk about U.S. relations with Cuba. Last December, the President announced a potential normalization of relations with Cuba. And when I think about that, I think no state is more impacted by U.S.-Cuba relations than the state of Florida. What is your view of the President's actions? And love to know what we should be doing as Floridians.
First of all, when the President made his announcement several months ago, millions of Cubans, both on and off the island as exiles, responded with anger, with disappointment, mostly with just sadness. And so what I've tried to do over the last couple of months is talk to my colleagues, my friends, other family members to try and get them to understand our point of view and where we're coming from. And just to put it all into a nutshell, just imagine yourself or your family members having from one day to the next absolutely everything taken away from you. All your worldly possessions, but more importantly, your memories, your family, your life, your youth, all that was taken away. And the person who took that away is still the person in power. And that's why that's something that hit so close to home for us as either Cuban exiles, my parents, or as children of Cuban exiles. Where the President made a mistake, number one, was in not consulting those who are affected by this. But number two, in not listening to history. History of relations with Cuba have shown that the Castro brothers, at any given moment, will take what they want for themselves. And this time doesn't show us that it's going to be any different. So really this was a time when the negotiation, the United States gave in a lot, but didn't really get a whole lot in return.
Recently, in fact twice in the last couple of months, I had the opportunity to be in Washington, D.C. with our President and CEO, Mark Wilson, and Alice Ancona, who runs our Miami office. And we met with members of the Florida delegation, and what we learned was that Cuba has the power to end the embargo today if they took certain steps. And so I'd love for you to outline what those steps are, and maybe as you do that, tell us about the resolution that you and the two other members of the Miami-Dade delegation have filed.
Well, absolutely. A lot of people think that the embargo is something that is imposed unilaterally by the United States onto Cuba. But the United States Congress took action to say that if Cuba took certain steps, freed political prisoners, had free and fair elections, if they took those steps, then the embargo would be lifted. So if Cuba would simply move towards democracy, move towards democratic principles, then that embargo would be lifted right away and they could be our partners. So just recently, the Florida Senate took a very affirmative step in standing with our colleagues, standing with myself and the two other Miami-Dade delegation members who are of Cuban descent, and they stood with us and saying, we are not going to stand for normalization with Cuba until Cuba starts to embrace democratic principles, which is the opposite of what's being done right now. Cuba is a place where the visitor can have it all, where they could go to the best hotels, stay in the most beautiful beaches, but where residents receive a ration book every single month that dictates what you can eat and when you can eat it. The same happens with companies. Companies in Cuba are not allowed to make decisions as to who to hire, what to pay. All of that is dictated by the government. That's not something that we should stand for in the United States. We should stand for freedom, because if we don't stand for freedom, then who will?
I know in Florida, as Floridians, we all have a dream and share that goal that someday there would be a free Cuba, a democratic Cuba, one that honors its citizens and stops human rights abuses. Present day, though, some businesses are starting to think about dipping their toe in the water with Cuba. Why should businesses care? What should they be concerned about right now?
Well, I would just ask them to be very careful. In 1959, Cuba, pre-Castro, Cuba was a thriving economy, a place of innovation, a place where many Americans came to visit. In fact, my grandparents-in-law spent their honeymoon there. So really, this was a place that was the jewel of the Caribbean, where there was not just fun, but where really lots of dreams came came true. All of that was taken away in 1 minute, and nothing has happened. Nothing has happened over the last 55 years to show that the Castro government would treat businesses today any differently. Right now, there is no free enterprise. Things that are done under the cloak, under the wording of free enterprise in Cuba, those folks are told who to hire, are told what to pay, are told when to open, what businesses they can deal with. One can't wake up one day and say, you know, today I want to open a nail salon, or today I want to have a trucking business. You have to ask the Cuban government and say, can I be in this business? And then the government makes that decision, and they govern every single decision that is made by that company. So I would warn those who are watching, or business executives from around the country, to just be very careful, because the Castro regime has shown us that they will do nothing in the future that is different than what they've done in the past.
Senator, the Florida Chamber would like to thank you for your leadership on this issue. And to our viewers, thank you for joining us on another edition of the Florida Chamber's Bottom Line.